Major Georgia-based corporations that bash that state's new voting law, like Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines, now facing boycott calls themselves. The critics say it's hypocritical for them to stay in the Peach State. Karl Rove, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Fox News contributor, here with us today. Karl, good morning to you. As we have done with many of our guests this morning, there's a lot to get to. Just go ahead and jump off on what is on your mind as you look at this now.
Well, Major League Baseball, as you may know, they're headquartered just a few blocks up from you there in New York, the New York studios of Fox. New York, home of Major League Baseball, forbids no excuse absentee voting, which is allowed in Georgia. You got to have an excuse in New York. You got to be absent from the county. You got to be ill. You got to be a primary caregiver, or you got to be in jail awaiting grand jury action or sentencing. And then you can get an absentee ballot. In Georgia, no need to get an excuse. You can do it no matter what. New York has 8 days of early voting. Georgia requires at least 17 and allows for more. So where's the outrage in New York by Major League Baseball about the pernicious voter suppression being practiced right in the home state of Major League Baseball?
I got a text yesterday from a Hall of Famer who will go nameless here because he hasn't granted me the authority to use his name on TV. He said, "Hey, Hemmer, they going to move the Yankees and the Mets out of New York now?"
Yeah, exactly. And look, we also got to worry about Missouri because we got 2 teams there and they don't allow no excuse absentee voting. And there's no early voting in Detroit. What are we going to do about the Tigers? Ohio, we got 2 baseball teams there. No early voting. Pennsylvania, we don't have early voting in Pennsylvania. What about 2 teams there? And what are we going to do about all those people in New Jersey who come and root for New York teams? Do they know that they're engaging in voter suppression by encouraging and supporting teams in a state that doesn't allow no excuse in-person absentee voting? I mean, this is ridiculous. And remember, where is Major League Baseball attempting to get a major expansion that'll mean big bucks to them? China, where they don't allow them to vote. In fact, they're cracking down on the ability of people to vote in Hong Kong by violating an international treaty that guaranteed democratic practices there. Now, if you want to run for office in the one place in China where where they actually have votes, you have to have approval from the Communist Party in Beijing in order to run. And yet that's where Major League Baseball, in all its humility, is attempting to have a major push. Way to go, Major League Baseball. Really smart.
Karl, Senator Tim Scott had a tweet that we want to put up here just for everybody to see, making a similar comparison that you're making about New York, but about Georgia versus Colorado. He says, Georgia, voter ID, 17 days of early voting. Colorado, voter ID, 15 days of early voting. Atlanta is 51% black. Denver is 9.2% black. The MLB is moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta, which has more day of voting rights than Colorado. The wokes are at it again, folks. Though I'm not sure that early voting is just the concern about the bill.
No, look, it's not. But let's be honest. This is about cosmetics. This is about Georgia has some of the highest percentage of registration in the South and among the highest above the national average in voter turnout, and yet they're getting penalized by making practical changes. You know, one of the big things is you can't have they can't give water and food in line. Well, in Georgia, they said, like they do in many other states, you cannot have politicking going on, electioneering going on within a certain number of feet from the polling place and a certain number of feet from people waiting in line. If you want to give free food and water outside 150 feet from the ballot box and 25 feet from anybody waiting in line, knock yourself out. You know, in New York, they have a similar provision. In fact, in most states in the union, virtually, I think every state has some kind of electioneering prohibition, and many of them have an explicit prohibition of providing food and water to people waiting in line.
Karl, Wall Street Journal, I like this, what I want to give for a shave that isn't woke. Call for number 5, guys. From my closet to my bathroom, my house is full of leftist brands. It's time to do something about it. All kidding aside on that. These corporations, I'll put Major League Baseball in the same category. It is a business after all. How do those who run these companies get backed into making these decisions? Is it the people who work for them? Or is it the people in their community who have direct contact with them saying, you cannot afford to allow this law to go forward without taking a position? How does that work?
Yeah. Well, you know, this was a decision by the CEO of Pepsi, or excuse me, of Coca-Cola, CEO of Delta, the CEO of Major League Baseball, all of which appear to not have a handle on the real facts. These people were making decisions just sort of in sentiment. Nobody can tell me they sat down logically and looked at this. You just can't. These people just sort of said, oh, there are lots of voices out there on the left saying this is bad, therefore I'm going to join with them in order to condemn these pernicious activities in the state of Georgia. And this was harmful. Yes, companies have a right to speech. Yes, they have a right to make their opinions known. But for God's sakes, will you please give it some considerable thought and know what the hell the facts are? And in this, they're being guided by the President of the United States, who in his news conference told lie after lie after lie. And I don't use that word lightly. When he said they're cutting off the voting at 5 p.m. so that working people can't get home from work in order to vote, he had to know it was a lie, or he was just poorly staffed and made no effort afterwards to go out and clean up his mistake. There were several other flat-out misstatements that he made, and I have to assume that they were either lies or misstatements, and if they were misstatements, they made no attempt to clean them up afterwards. In fact, Jen Psaki continues to emphasize them in a very artful way that allows her to say, well, I'm believing this, but I'm not exactly saying the exact same words. This is baloney. We're tearing our country apart for ridiculous reasons, and these companies are participating in it by not getting their facts straight.
The reason I asked that question is it's been reported that about a month ago in mid-March at one of these community events, it was either Delta or Coca-Cola, there was a pull-aside on behalf of one of the African-American leaders of the community, said you need to keep an eye on this bill. You need to watch this legislation. That's the reason I asked that question. Go ahead.
Well, Karl, what you were just saying leads to the question I have of the day, which is, all right, everybody's been airing their grievances, and there are a lot of them. Where is the opportunity, and who is it that can help get the country moving again? And even if it's on this issue, who can convene? Who's going to be the leader that says, let's get this all out on the table and try to solve this problem and move forward?
Awfully hard to do it when the President of the United States took gasoline, poured it on a smoldering fire, and turned it into a raging conflagration. It's really hard to do that. I mean, it's hard to figure out who the moral leader is. We can start by these business leaders sitting down and being specific. If they got specific problems, lay out the specific problems. But these blanket condemnations, when they themselves, the head of Major League Baseball, if he really is concerned about voter suppression, then let him speak out about the practices of no early votes in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Let him condemn the absence of no excuse absentee voting in Missouri and New York. Have him say something about the failure of people to have a right to vote in China, where they're attempting a major effort that will benefit Major League Baseball and put bunch of money in their pocket. I mean, please, if you're going to attempt to be a moral leader, be a moral leader in all respects, not merely in the ones where you think that it's to your temporary advantage to make yourself identify with the woke culture and not suffer any long-term damage.
Thank you, Karl. Wow. Thank you, sir. We'll see what happens.
We should have what
next,
he has for breakfast.
I would agree with that. Well done. See how the page turns next, okay? Thank you, Karl Rove in Austin. Thanks.